Blessings, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to Sacred Currents, which is our weekly space, weekly transmission, transition into, what's alive in the collective energies and what I feel called to share based on what I've been receiving and just what's going on and what I feel is alive in the collective field and the psyche right now, and to provide experience, you know, guidance, to be a beacon of light during some interesting and trying times that we're currently in. So I am Empress Zella Taj Khan Asetshi. I'm the founder of MON. And yeah, let's dive in. I always start every transition with a prayer. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Astaghfirullah, 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 astaghfirullah. Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Kafayan sad, kafayan sad, kafayan sad. Sallallahu ala Muhammad, sallallahu ala Muhammad, sallallahu ala Muhammad. I call in all of our highest teachers, our healed ancestral court, and all of the higher dimensional beings here for the evolution of human consciousness. I call in all the benevolent beings, all of our past lifetimes, the lessons, the challenges, the strength, the courage, the fortitude to trudge forward. I call in our sacred heart, the bridge between worlds, what makes things manifest, the divinity that lives at the center of our being, the collective consciousness that unites us all, our grounding cord, our connection to the earthly plane, and this beautiful place in which we have incarnated. We have chosen to incarnate. And I call in the celestial realms, the astral plane, and the highest light from the source of truth, the source of sources. Calling Marusa, Nairao, and all of my plant allies, Admira, and Pacho. Calling source, oneness, the light that shines, the fire that burns in all of our hearts and manifested us all. Aho, Amin, Eraka, Ashe. Thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you for jumping in, saying yes. Today, what I want to really talk about and dive deeper into is this centralization of the self, talking about the ego. So there are a lot of esoteric teachings that talk about the ego, and they, some say that you must kill the ego. It's this battle, it's this war, it's this animalistic, carnistic part of you, carnal, and I firmly believe that whatever we're in opposition to, we are matching that energy, whatever we're in opposition to, we are directly calling in, and we are consenting in our field because we then, resort to their level. We come into their energy, and whatever we match, we become. So if we're always focused on what we don't want to be, we will become that, because that is where our focused attention is. And so when we put information into our brains, into this carnal self, the carnal self is more of a machine, with inputs and outputs. And it is our soul essence, the deepest aspects of self, that are in the driver's seat and that are of a divine nature. The carnal self is the part of ourself that is instinctual, the part of ourself that is primal. It's also beautiful, it's also divine, but we have to really understand that there is this part of ourself. We have egoic desires, we have wants, we have expectations, we have goals and traumas and all of those things. And that's all in this animalistic part of self. It's all in this ego part of self. And that part of self is important. It's information. It's what ties us to this physical realm. It must be honored. It must be cherished. We must tend to the body. We must honor the body, and we must honor our primal nature and our animal kin and our plant kin and everything that's in the material. This flesh connects us to them. And so that is beautiful and that is sacred. And we have a higher part of ourselves. This purity, this childlike nature. And I firmly believe that the spiritual path, our entire path, is about returning to the purity that we were inherently born with as children. And all we're doing is walking backwards in this life, because we go through our lives and we experience traumas, we experience things, we have all of these external things telling us who we are. We're a child, we're a friend, we're a daughter, a son, a sibling, we're all of these things. We're our job, we're all these things we associate with our identity. These things were these I statements that we have. We develop this sense of self, these sense of I statements. And all of these I statements do is trap us in boxes. It's like we must balance this. We must honor the I statements and honor the physical body and this physical vessel and the roles that we take in this lifetime. But we also must remember that we are galactic beings in our origin. We are more than this body. We are not just this body. We are not just these I statements. We are not just the things that we consume, the things that we've experienced, what we've seen, and what we think in the mind. That is such a tiny sliver of who we are. And the thing that happens as we grow up in this world and we're more and more in these dense energies, we forget that. And we think like, I am this. And so if that I is challenged, then we're totally destabilized. Like if we have a view of ourselves, right? And someone comes up to us and says, you're not that thing. I don't think that you're that thing. Then we're totally destabilized and we're like, who am I? What am I doing? Oh no. And we're all over the place and we're like, where am I? Who am I? Like, and we get hung up, like if someone has a bad opinion of us, basically, someone has a bad thought about us and they say, you are this, it's like, oh no, am I this? Am I, and then we lose ourselves because we don't remember this divine nature that we are everything. We are angry. We are sad. We are maybe a villain in someone's story, and we are also beautiful and we're childlike and we're fun, free, like we can hold multiplicities. We are multiplicities because we are everything. We are the all. We are every person who has ever existed. We're every plant. We're every animal. We're every ecosystem. We're everything. So it's like we can't reject certain aspects of the physical just because we don't like them and because we don't want to be them, because then we become what we don't want to become. because we're focused on what we don't want to be and we're so centered on this I. And so that's what I want to talk about today is this sense of I. Every time we even use that word, I feel this, I am this, I am not this. We are separating ourselves from our divinity. We're separating ourselves from life because we are not any one thing. We cannot be defined with words. And when we try to fill ourselves and seek happiness in these I statements, in these forms, you know, they're hollow. All forms are hollow. Everything is hollow. It's like you try to find joy, right, through food, right? Like, let's just have an example of like food, right? It's like this is your favorite snack, your favorite thing. And you're like, man, I'm feeling so down today. I'm going to eat this thing and feel better, And even if it's not even a conscious thing, like, it's not going to fix all your problems or whatever, right? You're like, I want to eat this or do this to make myself feel better. Like, I want to feel happiness. I want to feel bliss. And so you go and you eat this thing and then it goes away, because you've eaten it. It's gone. It's not in your hand anymore. Right? Beneath form is nothingness. Form is hollow. Everything in form is hollow. Right? It's like you think you're going to be happy when you get this job. You think you're going to be when you quit this job. You think you're going to be happy when you go out in this place or do this thing or become this or change this aspect of yourself. You think you'll be happy. So we're seeking happiness in hollow things. We're seeking to fill this hole in us with hollow things, even if it's like something that you are moving in with earnest. Like, I will be a happier person if I take on this habit or if I take on this identity, because even identities are hollow, pointless. They have no substance to them. The only thing with substance is already within you. The only thing that can fill that hole is what's already within you. So there's nothing to seek, there's nothing to become, because our whole path in this incarnation is to remember that we are already whole and that we already have everything that we need within us. And the more that we seek external things to tell us who we are, and the more we use I statements, the more we separate ourselves from what we're actually seeking, which is ourselves, which is our divinity, which is source, which is God realization. It's those places in us that we have not resided in for a long time. That's where we will find it. That's what will fill this hole, is more of us, a more embodied sense of us, understanding ourselves more deeply. And I'll even share a personal story. So when I was in the jungle in my deep retreat, in isolation and fast and connecting with this particular ally who I now walk with, she opened up a new can of worms within me. I gained access to memories from childhood that I didn't even have conscious awareness of, memories that I did not even have before. And so they were really, really challenging. My psyche has protected me for a reason until I was ready to see those things, until I was ready to come into a deeper wholeness within myself. And so with those memories, I was given an opportunity, given an assignment to fill in those blanks. And so I had a really beautiful, deep conversation with my mom once I've integrated, and had the time I needed to come back to self in a really beautiful way. And I had to have a conversation with my mother to fill in those blanks. It's like, hey, I was a child and I remember this memory and I remember it from the point of view of a child. So tell me what was going on and what happened, you know? And for my mother, these are things that she had not even thought about in over 20 years, you know? And these are things that had been buried so deep in her psyche that she hadn't even told anyone about them. She hadn't processed them. She hadn't gone there in a really long time. Those were places in her that cobwebs had grown. And together, we were able to talk about it and hold space for each other in that. And it was so incredibly liberating. Like, this is how we do this generational healing work, this like deep ancestral lineage work and this pattern breaking work by going to the deep, dark places where cobwebs reside and saying, I'm not afraid of what I find here, because what I will find here is more pieces of myself that will lead me to my ultimate liberation. And that doesn't mean that these things aren't hard and sad and scary. I mean, it was really, really difficult. And I had to have a whole process about that and honor myself and my grief in understanding, like, whoa, I thought like my childhood was challenging and now it's like a whole nother level of challenging that I just realized I experienced and that my mother experienced, you know? And I got to understand her more deeply and how far she's come. And then I got to understand myself more deeply, which is a soul retrieval. You know, it was a soul retrieval for her to be able to see those parts and hold compassion for all people involved, you know, in those situations that are traumatic, you know? And then it's a soul retrieval for me because I get to go back to those versions of myself and say, I see you, I hold you, I love you. Like, let's grieve together. You know, let's feel this with a full picture, with clear eyes. And let's have our process. And let's see how long that takes. Because I'm not in a rush. And I know that once we come out of this, you know, once we feel balanced and integrated in this, we are free, you know? The more parts of ourselves that we honor and embody, the more free we become. And the more connected to our inner child we become. And that is our whole path, is returning to that childlike place of purity. And you can't do that without accessing and feeling all of the emotions of that child, of those child parts. There are multiple parts, you know, and there are multiple ways in which we dissociate. And being dissociated is abandoning the self. And so how do we heal from that self abandonment? And how do we tell those child parts that we're not going to abandon them? We go back there and we sit with them and we hold their hands and we say, like, yes, this is horrible and you should not have had to go through this. Let's grieve that. Let's grieve the times where we abandoned ourselves, and let's promise we're not going to do that again. And I will prove to you that I will not do that again by the way that I move forward in this life right now. Because it's not, there's a balance between going to the past, you know, and holding the past and feeling it, but not getting stuck there, you know, because there's divinity in everything that we've experienced. So it requires a certain level of nuance and depth here in going to those inner child places, because we can't just be stuck in the child loop. We have to be the adult with the child. We can't just be the child and say, this was scary, this is unfair, I can't handle it, I can't do this, oh no, like I should have been treated better, like people, right? And we use these I statements and we're like, I was harmed, I am hurt, I am sad, I. But the way that we liberate ourselves through these experiences is to honor that child part, but to be the adult and say, no, we got this. This was divine. This was hard. Let's go through the feelings. Let's feel the feelings fully. Let's bring them into this deeper heart space. Like, wow, that was challenging. Wow, that was intense. You know, like I feel grief. I feel the grief that I didn't understand as a child. And I am the adult now, and going forward, this is how I will behave with this knowledge. This is what can no longer continue in my life. And I do this not for myself, but for we, right? For all of my parts, my inner child, my teen, my young adult self, and also for my lineage, for my family, for my living relatives. Because the more we can move in this embodied state of being able to hold the past and also dream in the future, the more we continue to just like dance through this life and teeter between this knowingness of like, yes, we have this body. Yes, we have these feelings, these emotions. Yes, we have these thoughts, but we don't have to identify with them so harshly so that we keep ourselves stuck. And so I share that story because it was so liberating for my mom, and now she can move more embodied with more of her parts in accessible to her, and reach that childlike state of purity more with more of a clear pathway. You know, there's still more clearing work to do. There's always more clearing work to do. Perpetually in our lives, there will be more clearing work to do. And for me, it's the same. I'm that much closer to this ultimate state of purity, of being a child, of moving with that childlike freedom, because I honor those parts and I bring them in, you know, and I'm not trying to hide certain parts and certain memories, you know. So our psyche is here to protect us, you know. Those child parts left because things were hard. And when we are ready, they will be revealed to us and we will be able to go back there. But we can only do that through compassion, you know, and this deep love for ourselves, for everyone, for all of creation. We can only move with that in our hearts, and that has to be the strongest feeling, because that's the only way that you'll get out of the grief, you know, and you'll get out of the victimization of what has happened, you know, you know, that you might perceive as happening to you, you know, instead of for you. So with that said, you know, this theme of today is really just the centralization of self and how we lose ourselves in this physical material world because we want to cling to identity for a sense of safety, you know, for a sense of wanting control and to make sense of things. Things don't have to make sense for you to accept them, for you to love them and hold space for them. And actually, it's better if they don't, you know, because sometimes we get so caught up in the mind, we're trying to come up with reasons for things. Even in trying to find the divinity in things, we try to find reasons like, okay, why did this happen? What did it teach me? You know, how can we be patient with that unfolding? How can we be pro, like, life force, you know, pro unfolding? How can we be in deeper flow with source through it all? How can we just trust that everything will make sense when it needs to and that we don't need to push for answers? And that actually, when we're in the mind, we're slowing ourselves down and we're closing ourselves off to our answers. And that the only thing that's really being asked of us is to see things with truth, like deeper truth that's beyond this egoic sense of self, that's beyond this I statement. Because at the end of the day, we are creator beings, we are source incarnate. And everyone is. We're all the same. We're all pulling from this well of collective knowledge. Everything that anyone has ever realized is accessible to you. You know, have you ever noticed where there are certain things that you do and you just pick them up really easily. You just know. You know, there are things that you just know and you don't know how you know them. You've never studied them. You've never walked that path, right? And the degree of closeness that you have to certain information is based on your ancestral lineage and how close they were to this information. So if your grandfather was an herbalist, if your grandmother was a spiritual master in a certain tradition, if your great aunt, was did like a deep pilgrimage in the desert, those streams of consciousness, that information is just much more readily available to you in your lineage, in your work. But in a larger sense, all information that has ever existed is available to you. Things like people in the different religious traditions, especially the Abrahamic faiths, they talk about the prophets, and some of them idolize them, like we talk about Jesus, right? And idolizing this character and treating this avatar as God, right? But really they're just examples of what's accessible to us and what we can reach if we remember that we can reach that. And they're just supposed to be examples that everything that we've ever imagined, all of these storybooks, these fairy tales, they're all truth. You know, the telekinesis, the telepathy, the flying, like all of those things are accessible to us. We just have to remember that we can do it, right? And when we get so bogged down with the material, when we're so caught up in what we're doing and who we think we are, we literally close ourselves off to that stream of knowledge, to those deeper truths. We close ourselves off to feeling like we are source, to feeling it viscerally embodied. It doesn't matter how much you read. It doesn't matter how much you read about esoteric texts, or you have this like intellectual understanding that some things are possible, or you have this intellectual understanding of a spiritual tradition, or you have this intellectual understanding of these esoteric truths. That doesn't mean anything. That's like, as it's not really good for anything, right? We need an embodied experience. We need to live it. We need to be the teaching, right? It's important to have knowledge, right? Because knowledge is useful in itself. It can send you down certain pathways, it can help open up certain doorways for you, but you have to walk through the doorway. You can't just collect doors, you know? You can't just collect information. Because also people can feel that. We're in a collective field. People will know if you're just saying stuff and you haven't actually lived it. You know, that's where spiritual bypassing comes in. You can talk the talk all day. You can say all the right words. You know how to match someone else's crown and say what they want you to say what they want to hear. You know exactly how to talk your way through anything. But when it comes to how the words land, they're hollow, right? This form, all of this form is hollow. All of this is hollow. The only thing that is truth is in here, is this embodied presence. You know? It has to be to a point where it's so embodied that you can just sit quietly in a room and that the room itself changes, that the frequency of the entire space changes, that doors swing open for other people. Because that's our only job. We don't have to say anything. This book stuff, these words, they mean nothing. The true medicine is walking through the doorway. And then also, with your energy, reminding people that certain doorways exist that maybe they had forgotten, you know? So, this work of decentralizing the self comes in with knowing that there's nothing for you to do, that all the learning in the world will not make you happy, that none of this stuff in the spiritual world will be, none of this stuff in this physical world will be what you're looking for if you're really on the path, you know? And there are some people that are, on different levels in Hinduism, there are different stations, that are spoken of. And there's the station of, different people that incarnate to experience different things, right? There are some people, and it's kind of like they equate it to just like children versus, adults kind of thing, where it's like, some people have incarnated in this lifetime to just experience more of the just like hedonistic things, just like good food and um yeah, just more physical, more primal aspects of life, the more carnal things. And that's the peak of their life, and they're totally happy and they're blissful in that existence. And that is perfect. That is great. That is like, I honor every soul's path. You don't know what people incarnated to experience. And this is again decentralizing the I, not thinking that you know better for someone else. Because what if that's what they came here to experience and that's the peak of their life, and that's beautiful, right? But then there are the other people, there are some other people that came here, a little step above, and they're here for just actually, I don't even want to go into Hinduism. I'm not even going to go into those stations because I think it's more important right now just to stay focused on the aspect of the self. And so when we are super central in ourself and our ego and like our desires, our wants, our dislikes, that's what I believe is the root of all of our suffering. Because if we're in a conversation with someone and we're so centralized in the I, then we're worried about what that person thinks of us. Then we're worried about being perceived this and this way. Then we're worried about what they'll say, and we're not actually listening to them. We're not actually honoring their divinity. We're not actually expanding into the moment, into life, into what life is asking to pour through us in that moment. Because we're so concerned with ourselves. Even I'm hungry, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore. I. Our thoughts throughout the day, I challenge you to think about how many of those I thoughts you have during the day. And if they actually bring you any sense of joy, when it's like, I don't like this person. I don't want to do this. I don't like this. This. It's so subtle, yet so can be so debilitating. Like my mind is racing. I am upset right now. Like all of these things that we think all the time with the I, right? But like we're the ones observing the I statements. We're not the I that we're referring to in this. Like it's the body, The body's hungry, the body has to pee, the body is tired, you know? So this is not something that's going to be just like totally eradicated. Again, because the focus is balance. It's awareness. It's bringing our consciousness to it. It's not to just eradicate all of the I statements, but it's to notice when we're too preoccupied with the self, right? Because that's not how we're in aligned community when we're so preoccupied with the self. If we're interacting with a person and our intention for that interaction is, I want this person to like me, you're not seeing that person. You're not bearing witness to life. You're not aware of everything else that is moving and speaking and breathing through and around you. Because you're so focused on this egoic sense of self of, I want this person to like me, I want this person to understand me. So how do we broaden that a little bit? How do we bring this into we, or just like totally take the focus out entirely? Like, how can I see this person more deeply in this moment? How can I be so present with this person that I don't even have a response to what they're saying because I'm so present and focused on what they're saying and who they are, and I'm seeing everything. Like, that's how our intuition can come online more, and we can see beneath the words that someone is speaking to us, because we're not filling up ourselves with these I statements, and we're just so focused and we're so present with that person that they might be saying something, but their heart might actually be saying something else. you know they might be saying like, oh yeah, today is great, and like I have all of these things to do, and I'm excited to do these things and this and this and this, and they might be talking about all of these things over here, but you're like, wait, but your heart's a little sad. Like, what's going on there? Like, are you actually okay today? What do you need? you know And the quickest way to get out of these I statements and to feel better, because sometimes we get caught in loops. These I statements can get so intense, right? Because we are so obsessed with ourselves. That's inherent, like, no fault. Everyone's obsessed with themselves, you know? We can get so caught up in this idea of self, and who I am and what I'm feeling and what I'm doing, that we totally overlook everything else. We don't notice the beautiful butterflies flying around. We don't notice that maybe our cat just wants some attention. We don't notice that maybe a friend wants a hug. We don't notice, what life is trying to pour into us and gift us with, because we're so caught up in the brain and the I and the feelings, and you know so the quickest way to get out of the I statements is to do service, do something of service, just like selfless service, making food for people, you know calling up a friend and just listening, you know being present with the earth, doing active acts of service in your community, you know, weeding, watering plants, tending, stewarding land, stewarding plants. Quickest way to just separate yourself a little bit from that I, create a little bit of space. Because there's a lot of suffering, we think about like, I feel bad about this. And so we just need a little spaciousness. It doesn't mean disregard those parts. And I want to be clear about that too, because we need to feel all of these things. We need to be present to them. But it's about balance. It's like, how much of your day do you spend just thinking about yourself? You know? And how do you have the strength and the clarity and the spaciousness to leave those spaces? And then they will lessen and they will lessen and they will lessen. And actually, one thing that I think that some people forget when they're like deeply devoted to this work of self-realization, of healing, of shadow work, right? You think that if you take a break, you know, and you don't trust yourself to stay accountable. You don't trust yourself to do the work. Like if you're not constantly doing the work, if you're not constantly vigilant, you don't trust yourself to do the work. And that's also a lie, and that's also an I statement, of like, I yeah, I don't trust myself, you know. So a great way to develop this trust is to leave the work for a little bit, you know, to do some acts of service, to take a breather, and to say, actually, I don't have to think about myself right now. Because what that does is it fills your cup. Because we can't continue this work in a sense of like grinding, right? Again, that's not what the earth is asking us at this time of collective evolution. We can't grind against the grain, you know. What she is asking us is to hold deeper compassion and return to this childlike place of bliss, of purity, of open heartedness, of no fear of anything anywhere. And that only comes with remembering our divinity and remembering our connection, and that life breathes in and out of us in every moment. You know, that's the only way that we can sustain the work, is by moving with this place of like compassion and curiosity and openness and purity of heart. And that comes with taking deep, concerted breaks of thinking about yourself. If you're not taking breaks from thinking about yourself, then you're not actually doing the work, actually, you know? And the only way this like embodied presence comes is by being in community. We can do things by ourselves all we want. We can learn things in textbooks, we can journal, we can ruminate in our heads and try to figure things out. But at the end of the day, you can't actually embody that if you're not being that in community, if you're not tested in community. And then you go back, right? You balance. You have to be in community to see where you are, as a marker, as a milestone of like, this is okay, this is where I am, right? And then you go back and you're by yourself, and then you journal, and then you process the day, and you're like, this is where I was in integrity today, this is where I was out of integrity today, this is what I am being asked to move more into, right? And then you practice again in community. And when we feel like things feel too heavy, right? When we're stuck in the brain and thinking about ourselves and worrying about whether or not we're going to actually make it to this place that we want to make it, then we have fallen off course. And then we need to absolutely pause, because everything that you've ever wanted, everything that you've ever desired to become, you already are. And no amount of pressure will get you to remember that. Only through compassion and open heartedness will you remember that. So it's balance. It's doing the personal work on your own only after being out in the world and being able to have that mirror. Self reflection is very, 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 very important. Knowing your shortcomings, very, 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 very important. Knowing who you are in this incarnation, very, 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 very important. However, knowing that all of those shortcomings are also divine and have come from source and have been very specifically given to you, because your specific medicine is in those shortcomings. Everything that you are here to be and to illuminate within others are in those shortcomings. So, understanding that those are a divine gift too is also one of those keys to liberation. And the way that you understand that those are divine gifts is by putting less pressure on yourself to change. Because you need to understand something before you can change it. You need to understand the divinity in your shortcomings, in your flaws, where they've come from, how you learned them, in order to understand the divinity and why you have them and why this is your particular medicine to offer the world. That sort of clarity does not come through pressuring yourself to change. It comes through curiosity of them and dancing with them and befriending them. That is the only way that you can actually change them. And so, again, if you feel so in the weeds and you're too zoomed into yourself and you're too hyper focused on your shortcomings, it's time to zoom out. It's time to take a break. It's time to leave that and say, I'm going to do something of selfless service. And I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to make all of this food for people and I'm going to donate it. I'm going to tend to this land. I'm going to volunteer at this place. And I'm not going to think about myself. I'm just going to be focused on the people because they are my kin. They are me. You know, I'm doing service to myself because I am these people. I am this land. I am these animals. I am this deeper I, not this egoic top level I that has all of these shortcomings. Deeper. So I hope that's clear on the centralizing of the self. And I challenge you all to not try to change yourself this week, to just bear witness to yourself with openness and curiosity, with love. Because when we try to change something before we understand it, that's self rejection, self betrayal. There's a part of you that needs to be retrieved. It's a part of you that needs to be loved. So don't berate yourself in this spiritual path. Don't berate yourself in this journey. Know that every shortcoming that you have, everything that you find challenging, everything you don't like about yourself is another key to unlocking your ascension. That who you are is perfect inherently. And that our job is just to journey backwards. As we get older, we journey backwards. And yeah, even the parts that are resistant, to certain things, certain memories, certain people, there's wisdom there, there's medicine there. And the wisdom, the medicine only comes through ease, through levity, through loosening your grip. When you hold on to something so tightly, you can break it, and then you make a bigger mess. And then now you've got a bigger mess to clean up. When really you could have just cradled it so gently. You can hold yourself so gently. and say, wow, I learned a new shortcoming. Wow, what a blessing. Because I'm not here to be perfect. I know that this is a lifetime of uncovering. And if I know my shortcomings and I own them and I honor them and I walk alongside them while I'm in the driver's seat, and they can be in the passenger seat until I understand why they're even traveling with me. If you move with that sort of love and awareness and devotion to yourself, no one can hurt you. No one can trigger you. No one can make you do anything. And it's actually super nourishing to your nervous system when it's like one of your shortcomings shows itself, your humanness shows itself to people. And then they're like, whoa, you have this shortcoming. Then you're like, yeah, I know. And I'm trying to understand her. So thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, she sits in the passenger seat, and I'm wanting to get to know her so that I can release that, you know. And sometimes people will throw it to you as poison, because of their own unacknowledged shortcomings. They might say, like, you're doing this, you're bad because you did this, you're a bad person, you know. And if you are super embodied in the self and aware of your shortcomings, and you can say, yeah, so I understand where you're coming from, because like this is something that I'm working on and this is something that I'm working on. But like actually that other stuff that you mentioned just feels like projection, so I'm going to like throw that away with the trash. And your nervous system can be super regular because you know who you are and you know where you're striving. And you don't need anyone to tell you who you are. When you're not insecure about who you are, when you're not trying to hide aspects of yourself, when you're not trying to be this character, when you're not trying to hold on to this identity of who you are, the small I, then when people come to you and they say, you're not this because A, B, C, D, you're like, yeah, I know. Actually, these parts I'm working on. And yeah, thank you for that, you know? Or like, no, actually, that doesn't resonate because I know who I am. And if that's how you're feeling, that's okay. And I honor your feelings, but that's not who I am. So thank you. Goodbye, Because again, like I started this saying, when we're in opposition to something, we match it and we become it. So if someone comes to us and says something that feels out of line with who we think we are, it's then our job to say, what parts of this is true and that's why it's triggering me, and what parts of this are projection from them and I'm worried about how they perceive me, so that's triggering me. So it's like when we hold compassion for all of our parts, when we hold awareness and we don't try to change things right off the bat, but we trust ourselves enough on this path to address them when the time is right, and not putting pressure on ourselves to like, oh, I got to change this right now, right now. Clarity comes in divine time, right? Everything is a gift from source, right? Our current state of being is a gift from source, and it will take source level interference to change us, at the end of the day. And this is an important point too. Like, it is my belief that no one can change on their own accord. No one can change on their own accord, right? It is only in the divine timing that the path is set in motion for change. So it has nothing to do with anything a person says or does. It is between their relationship and source, their higher self and what they incarnated to experience and to do. So no one can change on their own accord. There are catalysts for change. And that is because that has been decreed in the cosmic realms for this to take place in the physical realms. So therefore, even on ourselves, we cannot even grow and ascend if it hasn't been already decreed between our higher self and source. So therefore, like, eliminate that pressure, man. Eliminate that pressure. If you know that you're on this healing path, if you know that you're doing the work, you're hindering your journey by putting that pressure on yourself and squeezing so tight and breaking yourself into pieces and then trying to collect the pieces and fit them back together, when you could have just been like softly cradling yourself like a baby and just allowing the current of life and ascension to take you, you know? And you'll be surprised. This is like positive reinforcement, because often we're like, no, if I'm not vigilant on this work, on this path, if I'm not vigilant, then I'm going to slip and I'm going to do this, but it's actually, it's actually the thought. It's the thought that if I'm not constantly paying attention to this, I will slip, that creates the slip, like that creates this, because you're putting that pressure on yourself and you're saying, again, our bodies are input machines, right? They try to make things true for us, right? Like, the universe works that way too. If you say that you are something, then the universe will conspire to make that true for you, so that's something to be careful of. I am sad, right? You want your whole consciousness to be filled with sadness? Let's go, So when it comes to this path and like this work, if you say, I trust that clarity will come in time, I'm actually facing something really challenging. I learned something really challenging about myself, and I don't know what to do with it. So instead of putting pressure on myself to like read more books about it and do the shadow work and journal, I'm going to trust that clarity will come in divine time on what I am meant to do with this. And right now I'm going to choose to move with levity and curiosity and care for this body, because now I've got to move these emotions through my body. Because the only way I'm going to get clarity and I can connect clearly to spirit, to my intuition, is by clearing this vessel so that I can be a clear channel. So what does that mean? It means taking care of the body. It means maybe you need a movement practice. It means maybe you need to cry. Maybe you need to scream. Maybe you need to do some more somatic embodiment so that that energy moves. And then being patient, letting it move in its own time. And then once it moves, not even forcing the clarity, knowing that it will come, trusting that it will come. And the more that you trust that it will come, the more you will see that positive reinforcement moving for you. And actually, that makes your path much more easy and smooth. Like, you can choose to learn through love and compassion. You don't have to learn through hardship and pressure. That is one way to learn, but it's slower. It's a slower route, because again, you're not gonna receive the change that you want by force. It has to be like, that's in divine timing. So you can suffer on the way for that timing to align for you, or you can be in bliss on that way, and you can be in compassion, and you can hold yourself. Like, that's up to you, right? And again, like, with the whole theme of today, it comes with decentralizing the self, because we're all so quickly to fall into this victim place of like, I need to identify with this thing. I am this thing. We are not any of these things. And the more we seek validation in the material realm, the more hollow we will become and the deeper our holes will get. And the more disconnected we will get from source. So I think that feels complete for this day. That one was really heavy in the field today. And yeah, I think that feels complete. So I thank you all for spending this hour with me, for receiving. Take whatever resonates with you on your heart level, in your deepest truth, and toss the rest, because even I can't tell you who you are, or what you're experiencing, or what is true for you. I share what I receive, and I choose to just be a vessel for the message. So, alhamdulillah, I'm so grateful for everyone in this beautiful collective. I love you all. I'm going to close us out with a prayer. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sallallahu ala Muhammad, sallallahu ala Muhammad. ربنا أتمم لنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير. ربنا أتمم لنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير. يا لطيف يا لطيف يا لطيف. I express gratitude to all of our higher teachers. Express gratitude to Marusa, Noirao, Padmarao, and all of my plant allies in spirit and in the physical. To the great spirits of all the lands, to all of our healed and well ancestors, human and galactic. Express gratitude to all the higher dimensional beings here for the evolution of human consciousness. Express gratitude to our Mother Earth, to the Ascended Masters, to the elementals, the nature spirits. I ask that everyone throughout this day feels grounded and rooted and connected to the earth, that we all move in one, in constant awareness of this we, and that the mind is slower today, that the mind is easier to manage, and that we are fully present in our bodies, kissed by the sun, feeling viscerally that connection to the all, to this grand we, that the nature spirits send their love, that the plants dance and send us beautiful messages, that the elementals hold us in their firm awareness of the nature of life and our truest healing potential. and that we remember that we are all one. Yes, and love and blessings to each of our inner children. May we have the courage to walk with them through the shadow realms of our own psyche. Alhamdulillah ya shakur. Alhamdulillah ya shakur. Amin. Aho. Iraka. Ashe. Thank you all.